Are humans devolving? Now, we seem to be in the middle of multiple crises, right? Because we have like a huge problem with testosterone. We have like it's rapidly falling along with the sperm count down by like 60% in the last 60 years, about 1% each year, right? So there's been a steady decline. Then there's also a lot of issues with IQ. So IQ is on the decline. Overall disease and illness is on the rise, right? Like obesity and diabetes and all this other fun, right? You can argue the fact that we've been devolving since the agricultural revolution. Society has been evolving, but humans themselves have been devolving, right? Because we go from self reliant, adaptable creatures to a rigid piece of a much larger structure, right? And so we can become lost within that, right? At the same time, you have the rule of numbers, right? So you have a much higher chance for abnormality, right? In good regard. So, yeah, you're going to have some in the bad regard too, but you can also have geniuses, right? Just statistically, you're going to have people with all time high IQs continually, right? So, like, as a species, you can evolve as long as everything's able to move forward in that regard. But as a whole, we're definitely not doing so good, right? In Western civilization, right? We see, and in America especially, there is a plethora of mental illnesses, right? There's all sorts of neurological disorders, right? Cancer, heart disease, right? Diabetes, and all this fun. Now, there are a lot of things to blame for this, right? Like the majority of the food in the grocery stores didn't exist 70 years ago, 50 years ago, right? So there's a lot to be said about that. Plus, there's been all sorts of different toxins introduced to all of us, really, right? Because you had the plastics revolution, this miracle that you can be recycled and you can use it for anything, and you kind of can, but it's petroleum based and it's cancerous and it's really unhealthy for you, and it's damages and helps to inhibit like testosterone production, which has an effect on sperm count and energy. And then it just has all sorts of issues. Now, the like grains that we eat. Now, this is a whole another issue, but it makes you stupid. The high amount of carbohydrates and gluten and sugar that we consume, right? So gluten causes swelling, right? And way more people are sensitive to it than they check for, right? Because if it doesn't irritate your digestive tract, it doesn't come up as you having a gluten sensitivity. But it's a lot worse when it causes inflammation of your arteries and it limits blood flow to the brain. And then you have sugars that cause all sorts of sporadic things. And we're not eating nearly as much healthy fats. Like your brain is made of cholesterol and fat, right? Then you have all sorts of other contaminations being introduced. So, like, a lot of the food is now being ground with metal machines. Really, everything's industrial, right? So, there's all sorts of different byproducts within that, right? And then metals, all sorts of heavy metals are inside the human body, just all time record highs, right? And then you have that leaching into the babies. So, if the mother has an insanely high heavy metal toxicity, the baby acts like a sponge and pulls all of that out, and then you have an insane rise of autism and all this other fun, right? Not to mention the fact that there's damage being done to the intestines, causing all sorts of leakage from the food that you consume into your bloodstream and that causes you to have even more heavy metal contamination. And then we're just barraged with all sorts of psychological attacks, right? And there's indoctrination happening on every level. Like a lot of money and energy and time has been invested into trying to manipulate you as a consumer, right? Everybody wants your money, right? And in our society, money is equated to time, right? And time is the only thing that you have. And so like if you don't think about money as your time being spent directly, then it's kind of a facade, right? Because you can't regain time, but you trade your time for money, and then you spend your money all willy nilly. You just throw your time away, right? So you're selling your soul for an hourly rate. It does something up here, like living in cities, not seeing the stars. There's so many things that we do that are unnatural, right? And then not to harp on cities, but they're basically breeding grounds for sociopaths. Like it's almost designed to do that. And then the way that the incentive system is set up in our society, at least to a certain degree, definitely encourages sociopathic tendencies, right? And then the overall attack on families, that's a huge deal, right? Because you got a rapidly depreciating currency, right? So being a single parent is insanely difficult now more than ever, unless you're highly skilled in a certain way and you're able to make good money, right? It's not an easy thing for a person to work a full-time job and raise a child, right? And then the tax system and the welfare system encourage women to not get married. It's kind of messed up. And then a lot of the not saying that all women get married. There's a lot of guys that are pieces of garbage, but that's a whole nother thing where men aren't men and women aren't womanly, and it kind of has some negative ramifications just how things function. I don't know. It's almost like we were like genetically dispossessed, like what's the word I'm looking for? Whatever. But there's a reason why we are the way that we are, right? Kind of the way that we evolved through all this, and I suppose that we could evolve on to uh, surviving through pharmaceuticals and living through technology as an extension of ourselves, right? And that kind of seems to be where the powers that be would want us to be gearing towards, right? Separate ourselves from nature and how we're supposed to naturally live, right? Like food is supposed to be medicine, not synthesized whatever, right? But they want to integrate us with technology and do all this, kind of set it up like a slaughterhouse. You know what I mean? They can eat organic food and stuff like that, but there's not enough for everybody. So you can eat the high fructose corn syrup and become obese and get diabetes and end up dying from cancer. But we've been parasitically making money off of you the entire time. That sort of thing, right? Kind of grinds my gears. So, are we devolving? I believe so, but it is due to influences that we have allowed, right? Things that are directly targeting us. So, the majority of these things would take care of themselves, right? Like microplastics within the body, they kind of wash out relatively quick, but you have to stop continually exposing yourselves to these petroleum based products, right? So, we can make all of our plastics out of hemp, which works brilliantly, right? You can make like 30,000 some products just with hemp, right? And it's way better, it's way more natural, it's completely recyclable, and it's renewable. You don't have to depend on petroleum, which everybody loves, right? Hemp grows almost anywhere. Beautiful. We need to start growing and harvesting hemp and using it for manufactural production, right? Because I don't got time to go off on all of this, but that's part of the toxicity that is causing our species to become so, I don't know, demasculated, right? It's important. Okay, so what else do we got? All of the medicine and food and all this stuff, we need to redirect the entire way that we look at this. Like, it is more expensive for everybody to be eating nutritious, appropriate, delicious food, but you're also going to save so much money because we dump trillions of dollars into the medical system when we could be spending millions of dollars, billions of dollars, maybe. But there's all sorts of different ways that this can be done too, because you can build skyscrapers that run everything off of hydroponics, right? They have those in New Jersey. It's not hard to grow and manufacture and set up this stuff anywhere if we just put our minds to it and try to get over this whole fictitious currency and we stop allowing insurance companies and medical and pharmaceutical industry to just like rape all of us. That'd be cool. That'd be nice. I want to get past that. And then we can kind of move forward to, you know, maybe use something different in brakes so that way we're not spilling asbestos into the air in all the cities. I mean, we already took the lead out of the gas because there was a bunch of lead in the gas, and now, everybody has lead poisoning, and you're kind of seeing that play out with all of this mental illness, right? We need to start doing metal detoxes and parasite detoxes and start thinking about more humane ways to treat our food and stop giving cows corn. We need to start letting them graze, because we took grassland and we grow corn in it that destroys the soil, and then we feed it to cows that are supposed to eat grass. Wow, it's brilliant, right? So, I mean, there's all sorts of other solutions for energy and basically just revamping all of the way that our society is built, right? Because I mean, it got us this far, right? But we are decades, if not like just behind, because of the way the system has been propped up fictitiously. And we do need to evolve, but I'm afraid that it's not going to happen while we are currently being oppressed as a population by all of these things, right? So it has to be integral, like from beginning to end. We got to revamp the educational system. We got to redo our infrastructure. We got to stop all of this contamination, especially. And that's what needs to be done first. But we also got to work on some of the psychological operations that have been used against the population, right? Uh, it's really difficult once somebody is set in their ways and they're emotionally attached to an idea or a concept, such as what's healthy, right? Like going to the doctors, what's healthy, right? Taking drugs, that's what cures you, you know? And then it's just a radical way to rethink. And we almost do have to revolutionize the way that the medical industry is done. Not bashing it, there's definitely a lot of things that are amazing. Like the medical industry is amazing for trauma and all of this. Like where there are so many lives, like infant mortality and women dying giving birth. Like it's phenomenal what they're able to do. But there's a lot of other things where it's like, yo, there is a better way, right? I think that the pandemic kind of revealed that to anybody who's been paying attention, that there's definitely some issues in the way that health is approached, right? We are being bred to be cattle, basically, right? Because that's what you do. You have them live in shit conditions and then you pump them full of antibiotics and all sorts of, you know, you feed them a diet that they're not supposed to naturally have. And it makes them stupid and sick. And then stupid and sick people don't revolt because they need you to keep them alive. It's an insidious thing. And you see this done with our health. You see this done with our finances, right? Now you're on welfare. Now you're on this. Now you're on that. They got you, right? Don't buy houses, rent. Why should you be collecting any type of wealth for your next generation? You know, that's what's ridiculous, right? Real tough times for a lot of people. And hey, I'm actually pretty cozy for the most part. So I just don't want to just hunker down and only take care and worry about myself. But I don't know exactly what to do, so I'm just ranting into a laptop. But we got to do something. And we got to start thinking about different ways that we can move forward as a species. We need to stop this poisonous diet and these toxic entities from coming into our population, especially our youth, right? We have more in common with each other than those that want us to fight.